At Thanksgiving they mocked me for being cut from Grandpa's will, so I let them celebrate the sale, and once the buyer was revealed I exposed the forged will and quietly turned their smirks into pure, unavoidable legal panic. I, Ethan, 32, male, the so-called middle kid of my family, which is just a polite way of saying the disposable one. My sister Janice was born first and immediately got crowned the golden child. She could have sneezed into a microphone and my parents would have called it a TED Talk. Then came Jake, the youngest, the baby we all had to protect. He could have driven a car into the neighbor's mailbox, and my mom would have blamed the mailbox for being too close to the street. And then there was me, smack in the middle. Not the oldest, not the youngest, just the placeholder. But here's the thing. I wasn't some broken little crybaby about it. I was smart enough to see the game early on. I stopped wasting energy trying to prove myself to people who were never going to clap. The only one who ever made me feel like I wasn't background noise was my grandpa. He owned this old-school restaurant in town. Nothing fancy, red leather booths, a squeaky pie case by the counter, and the kind of burgers that made you forget cholesterol was even a thing. To most people it was just a family joint. But to me, it was a whole universe. He let me sit in the back booth while he handled customers. I'd roll silverware, refill ketchup bottles, and he'd sneak me fries when Mom wasn't around. He'd call me his little manager and show me stuff no kid usually gets to see. How to balance a register. How to spot a fake smile on a supplier. How to stretch $1 without looking cheap. Janice never cared. Jake never lasted more than 5 minutes before whining about being bored. But me? I actually listened. I think that's why he liked me. I wasn't there for free food or praise. I was just there. Now don't get me wrong. My parents weren't evil masterminds. They were just delusional, entitled, and convinced their opinion was law. They thought Grandpa's restaurant was too much work and old-fashioned. My mom wanted Janice to get into law or politics. My dad wanted Jake to be the next Tom Brady. Meanwhile, their middle kid was learning how to calculate profit margins on paper napkins and they rolled their eyes like I was playing with crayons. When Grandpa died, I was in college out west, broke, scraping by with loans and part-time jobs. I couldn't afford the plane ticket back for the funeral. I called my mom, asked if they could help with the cost. She said something like, "Ethan, you've always been independent. You'll figure it out." Independence, their favorite excuse for neglect.
What made it worse?
They didn't even tell me the funeral got moved up a day earlier. I found out from a voicemail after he was already buried. Their excuse? It was a small family thing. Everyone was grieving. It wasn't about you. That line has lived rent-free in my head for years. It never is about me with them, and they act like I'm dramatic for noticing. After that, I made a choice. Stop waiting for their approval, stop chasing their crumbs. I built my own life. I got into software development, climbed the ladder, and carved out a life that didn't include them. Not in a bitter way, but in the kind of I'd rather sit alone with takeout than force small talk at Thanksgiving way. Still, the restaurant was different. Every time I thought of Grandpa, I thought of that place. The greasy smell that never really left the walls, the hum of the old fridge in the back, the sound of his deep laugh echoing off the tile. That was my childhood safe zone. And the crazy part, he always said, "One day this will be yours to run if you want it." But of course that's not what I was told when he passed. My parents said Grandpa had simplified everything and left the restaurant to them. No will shown, no paperwork, just trust us. And because I was 21, broke, and too tired to fight, I believed them. I figured maybe he changed his mind. Maybe he wanted to avoid drama. My mom's words, always that phrase, avoid drama, which basically meant accept whatever we decide and shut up. For years, the restaurant just sat there, a once busy place that turned into a tax write-off for my parents. They'd use it occasionally. Jake would drag his buddies there to drink soda and act like he owned it. Janice used it for some Instagram-worthy backdrop once, but mostly it just gathered dust. The worst part, I stayed away. I thought it wasn't mine to care about. I thought Grandpa left it to them because maybe I wasn't good enough. You'd be surprised how fast you can convince yourself you don't deserve something when your family repeats it enough. But I'll say this, distance teaches you more than constant fighting ever does. Living across the country, building a career, figuring out life without them. It gave me perspective. Every birthday text 6 hours late, every "oh sorry, forgot to loop you in" moment just reinforced it. They didn't see me. They never did, except Grandpa. He always did. The invisible middle kid, the placeholder, he was about to become the problem they didn't see coming. I hadn't thought about the restaurant in years until I caught wind of how badly my family's finances were circling the drain. It started with Janice's texts. You ever get a message so fake nice that you can practically hear the entitlement bleeding through the screen? Hey, hope you're doing well. Can we talk about something important? Love you. Translation, I need money. Turns out her thriving event planning business was basically just her maxing out credit cards to rent shiny spaces and hire temp staff so she could brag on Instagram about being a CEO. She thought clients would magically appear. Spoiler, they didn't. By the time she came crawling to me, she was 3 months late on loan payments and her car was basically a mobile storage locker full of unopened bills. Then there was Jake. My brother's financial strategy could be summed up as YOLO, new gadgets, sports betting, impulsive road trips, whatever gave him quick dopamine. He'd bounce between crypto expert and future real estate mogul depending on whatever YouTube video he watched that week. Of course, none of it ever stuck. And he was in over his head with debt collectors. And my parents, they weren't drowning, but they weren't coasting either. Dad's investments kept tanking, and Mom kept covering for Janice and Jake by funneling money their way. So, the whole family unit was wobbling on legs made of credit card debt and bad decisions. That's when they all suddenly remembered I existed. First came the group call. I answered out of sheer curiosity. Immediately, it was like walking into a badly rehearsed play. Janice launches in, so, we've been talking, and, we really think this is the moment for the family to come together. Jake in the background, yeah man, like you've got your big job and all that, we just need a little help, nothing major. And my mom with the cherry on top, Ethan, sweetheart, you're so successful now. You can afford it. This is what family is for. I let them ramble for 10 minutes. Debt this, stress that. How Grandpa's restaurant just sits there. Basically, their big solution was for me to hand over cash or co-sign some loans while they kept running their clown show. When they finally paused to breathe, I laughed out loud. Not a nervous laugh, not a sarcastic chuckle, just a genuine belly laugh at how absurd it was. Let me get this straight, I said. You want me to throw money into the same black hole you've been feeding for years? You're broke because of your own choices, and now I'm supposed to be the family ATM? Janice tried the guilt card. Ethan, you don't understand the pressure I'm under. My business is about to fail. I cut in, your business is about to fail. Don't sugarcoat it. Jake jumped in with his usual half-baked logic. Bro, if you just spot me a little I can flip it, like turn it around with a quick win. I've got this system. I didn't let him finish. Jake, your system is why you're dodging calls from 3 different credit companies. I'm not bailing you out. That's when my dad decided to go full dictator. We're not asking, Ethan. We're telling you this is what needs to be done. We've always made family decisions together. I couldn't resist. Oh, really? Like when you all decided to bury Grandpa a day early and forgot to tell me. Or when you decided the restaurant wasn't mine even though I practically grew up in it. That kind of together. Silence. The kind of silence where you know you've hit a nerve. Finally, Mom hissed, "That's not fair." Yeah, I said flatly. Life's not fair. Which is exactly why I'm not signing up to pay for your mistakes. I hung up before they could launch into Act 2 of their sob story. For the next few weeks, things were frosty. No calls, no texts. Honestly, I enjoyed the peace. But then I started noticing small signs online. A property alert I'd set up years ago, mostly because I like to track addresses that meant something to me, popped into my inbox. The subject line, new listing, Davis Family Restaurant. I stared at it for a long minute. They were really doing it. They were actually selling Grandpa's restaurant without even telling me. I clicked the listing, photos of the dining room, the kitchen, the old neon sign. The description was dressed up with the usual realtor fluff, prime location, investment opportunity, great potential. No mention that it was once the heartbeat of a family. No mention of Grandpa who'd poured decades into it, just a property to be flipped. I called Mom immediately. She answered on the third ring, voice sugary sweet. Oh, hi, honey. Everything okay?
Yeah, I said. Saw the listing. You're selling the restaurant?
There was a pause, deliberate and fake. Well, yes. We were meaning to tell you. It's just you're so busy out there and we didn't think you'd be interested. Interested? I repeated. It's Grandpa's restaurant. Of course I'm interested. Mom sighed like I was being unreasonable. Ethan, it's become a financial burden. The taxes, the upkeep, everything. And right now, the market's good. It's the smartest move for the family, always for the family, which usually meant for Janice and Jake. I didn't argue, I didn't yell, I didn't beg. I just said, "Okay, thanks for letting me know." And when I hung up, I sat there for a long time, staring at my ceiling fan. Something inside me shifted. Not anger, not sadness, just clarity. They wanted to erase me again. Pretend my history with that place didn't matter. Pretend Grandpa's word didn't matter. Pretend the restaurant was just another asset to pawn off because they'd screwed themselves into debt. They thought I'd let it slide. But this time, I wasn't going to. The old version of me, the go-along-to-get-along guy, would have sulked for a week, maybe sent a long passive-aggressive text and then let it die. That guy was gone. I wasn't about to argue with people who already decided I didn't matter. If they wanted to play dirty, fine, I'd play smarter. First step, I set up an LLC, Bennett Holdings. Bennett's my middle name, clean, generic, boring enough that no one would look twice. I hired a buyer's agent too, so even the realtor wouldn't know it was me. Every trace of Ethan Davis vanished from the deal. Just another faceless investor with paperwork in order and cash lined up. When I flew back, I didn't tell anyone. I put on a blazer, combed my hair, and walked into the restaurant like I was a stranger. The realtor was waiting with her big fake smile. "Great location, lots of potential," she chirped. I nodded like a guy who cared about spreadsheets more than memories. Inside, it was a gut punch I didn't let show. The booths were dusty, the neon sign flickered like it was on life support, and the kitchen smelled like grease that hadn't been scrubbed in years. But under all that, I could still see Grandpa leaning over the counter, flipping burgers like he had all the time in the world. The realtor kept talking numbers. High traffic area. Plenty of upside if you modernize. I ran my hand along the counter, pretending to size it up like I wasn't reliving my childhood in the back booth. I played it cool, yeah, I can work with this. We toured the place and I kept my mask on. No emotion, no nostalgia, just a guy interested in closing fast. That's exactly what they wanted. Someone who wouldn't ask too many questions. The offer went in through my LLC slightly under asking. And guess what? They accepted without hesitation because greed makes people sloppy. We closed just 2 days before Thanksgiving, which meant Janice's big news was the sale she didn't even realize I'd already made to myself. My family had no clue. To them, I was still the invisible middle kid, too far away and too busy to care. Perfect. Then came Thanksgiving. Janice sent the text, "Dinner at Mom and Dad's, 7 p.m., formal attire. Big news to share." The exclamation point practically screamed, and she thought she was about to drop a mic. I RSVP'd yes. I showed up in a charcoal suit, bottle of wine in hand. Jake opened the door, already smelling like cheap cologne and desperation. "Well, look who finally shows up," he grinned. The ghost of Thanksgiving. Inside, the decorations were over the top. Mom buzzing around with her apron. Dad holding court like he was hosting a talk show. Janice sat at the table in some sparkly dress, scrolling on her phone like she was too important to look up. Same circus, different holiday. Dinner started out normal enough. Turkey, stuffing, cranberry sauce. Janice bragged about her clients. Jake cracked jokes about crypto like he wasn't broke. And Mom smiled too wide at every story. I played my part, quiet, polite, nodding when expected. Then, right as pie was being served, Mom put her fork down with this smug little smirk. We finally got rid of Grandpa's restaurant. The buyers practically jumped at the chance. Janice laughed, swirling her wine. About time. That place was such a waste. And Ethan? Well, he was never in the will anyway, which is good because he'd only screw it up. Jake piled on, yeah. Can you imagine if he got it? He'd probably turn it into some weird tech bunker. I let them have their little comedy routine. I took a slow sip from my glass, set it down, and finally spoke. "Cool. Hope you enjoy the cash since I'm the one who bought it." Silence. Absolute, perfect silence. Mom froze mid-smile. Janice blinked like she misheard. Jake's grin slipped into a confused half-frown. Dad's jaw clenched so hard I thought his teeth might crack.
I leaned back in my chair, calm as ever.
"Yeah, Bennett Holdings. That's me. Congratulations. You sold Grandpa's restaurant to the son you swore wasn't in the will." No one moved. The only sound was the hum of the heater and the clink of Janice's fork sliding off her plate. I didn't rush to fill the silence. I wanted them to sit in it, squirm in it, realize for once they weren't the ones pulling the strings. Dad finally broke. "Ethan, don't be ridiculous. The buyers were from out of state, some real estate group." I smirked. "Bennett Holdings. Look it up. Legal, clean, airtight. I just used my middle name. Guess your realtor wasn't too sharp about checking."
Mom's voice cracked.
Why would you do this behind our backs? Behind your backs? I laughed. You mean like how you tried to sell it behind mine? Don't get it twisted. The only thing I did was play your game better. Jake muttered something under his breath, but I ignored him. My eyes stayed on Dad. He looked like a man who just realized his playbook didn't work anymore. The rest of dinner was tight-lipped and awkward. Janice stabbed at her pie like it had personally offended her. Mom disappeared into the kitchen for 20 minutes and came back with forced cheer plastered on her face. Dad sat there sipping his drink, silent, eyes distant. I didn't press. I didn't gloat. I just sat there, calm, sarcastic smile in place, letting the silence do all the talking. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't the invisible middle kid anymore. I was the problem they didn't see coming, and I'd only just started. The fallout from Thanksgiving was almost comical. Group texts lit up like fireworks the next day. Mom sent the first one, short and sharp. You blindsided us. This family has always made decisions together. Right behind her came Janice, real classy Ethan, buying the restaurant just to spite us. You really think this makes you better? And of course Jake. Always the comic relief, bro, you should have told me. I could have gotten us a better deal. I didn't respond to any of. Silence is underrated. You can say more with nothing than they ever could with paragraphs of delusion. Instead, I started digging. If there's one thing I've learned in my career, it's that paper trails don't lie. People do, families definitely do, but paperwork, that's where the truth hides. So one night I pulled up the county's online records, easy enough. A couple of clicks, some keyword searches, and there it was. A quit-claim deed transferring the restaurant to my parents 3 weeks after Grandpa's funeral. That was my first red flag. Why the rush? Why not let it pass through probate like any normal estate would? I stared at the document for a long time. My mom's signature was there, my dad's and Grandpa's. Except something about it didn't sit right. I remembered Grandpa's handwriting from when he used to leave me notes at the restaurant, blocky, deliberate, heavy on the ink. The signature on that deed looked off, rushed. Still, I didn't jump to conclusions. Instead, I went further. Probate records, wills filed around the time Grandpa died. It didn't take long to find one, an older will dated years back, naming my mom as the main beneficiary. But that wasn't the part that made my stomach tighten. It was the gap. I knew for a fact Grandpa had updated his paperwork in the last year of his life. He'd mentioned it to me offhand once, sitting in his office at the restaurant saying, "Got to make sure everything's set the way I want it." So where was that version? I called the county clerk's office the next day. The woman on the phone sounded like she'd rather be anywhere else, but she was helpful enough. There was a later will filed, she said. It's in the archives. I can mail you a copy. And then she added something that made it click. The will had been lodged, but never admitted to probate. My parents had pushed the older version through and papered over the rest with that forged quit claim. 5 days later, a thin envelope showed up at my apartment. Wills are public records after death, so the clerk mailed me a certified copy straight from the archives. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at it like it was radioactive. Then I tore it open. There it was in black and white, Grandpa's last will and testament, dated just 1 month before he passed. My eyes scanned the page, and then I saw it. To my grandson, Ethan Bennett Davis, I leave my restaurant and all its contents. He has always valued its history and will preserve what matters most. I read it 3 times just to be sure I wasn't hallucinating. Grandpa hadn't just hinted. He hadn't just talked. He'd made it official. He left the restaurant to me and my family buried it. I sat there for a long time, the paper trembling in my hands. It wasn't just theft. It was a full rewrite of history. They had stood there at Thanksgiving, smirking, laughing, acting like I was some outsider, all while knowing this restaurant was supposed to be mine. That's when something clicked in me. I wasn't just going to sit back and enjoy the fact that I'd outsmarted them with the purchase. That wasn't enough anymore. They'd crossed a line so deep it split the ground in 2. The next move was obvious. I needed a lawyer. I made some calls and landed a meeting with a guy named David, mid-40s, sharp suit, the kind of lawyer who listens more than he talks. I laid it all out, the deed, the will, the timeline. He flipped through the papers, eyebrows rising higher with each page. "Let me guess," he said finally. "Your parents never submitted this version to probate." "Looks like it," I said. He tapped the date at the bottom of the will. "This is the most recent version, legally binding. If they filed the old one instead and then rushed that quit-claim deed, we're looking at fraud." The word hung in the air like a weight. Fraud. Not a misunderstanding, not a family disagreement. Fraud. I didn't smile, didn't crack a joke, I just nodded. So what happens next? David leaned back in his chair. We build the case carefully, quietly. We don't tip them off yet, but you've got something real here. Walking out of his office, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: control. For once, I wasn't the outsider getting scraps. I was holding the cards and they didn't even know it. That weekend, I drove to the restaurant, my restaurant. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The air smelled stale, the floor sticky from neglect, but I didn't care. I walked straight to Grandpa's old office, sat down at his battered desk, and pulled the will from my bag. I set it on the desk right where he used to sign invoices and write me little notes about not forgetting to take the trash out. "This is mine," I said out loud, voice steady. Not to anyone else, just to myself. And for the first time I believed it. Believing it and proving it were two different things. My family had already shown they were willing to bend reality into whatever shape made them look innocent. I wasn't about to walk into this fight with only one piece of paper. I needed a fortress of evidence. David, my lawyer, set the tone in our next meeting. "We don't just prove fraud," he said. "We bury them under facts, testimony, documentation, the works." So I started hunting. First stop, Grandpa's old CPA, a gray-haired guy named Wallace. I half expected him to brush me off, but when I mentioned my grandfather's name, he actually lit up. Your granddad was sharp, always clear about what he wanted. Wallace pulled up old emails, and sure enough, there it was. One dated a week before Grandpa passed, summarizing his estate plan. The restaurant to me, jewelry to Janice, a small trust for Jake. He even wrote, "I hope they honor this, but if not, it's airtight." That email alone was dynamite. Wallace printed it and signed a statement verifying it was authentic. Next stop was the restaurant itself. I found one of Grandpa's old cooks, Tony, still working at a nearby diner. When I asked him about Grandpa's intentions, he didn't even hesitate. He told me 100 times the place was yours. Said you were the only one who cared. The rest just saw it as a cash machine. Tony agreed to testify if it came to that. Then there was Martha, a woman from Grandpa's church who used to volunteer at the soup nights he ran from the restaurant's kitchen. When I asked if she remembered him talking about the future of the place, she laughed. "Oh, he never shut up about it. Said you were the only one who'd keep it running the way he wanted." Another statement signed. The notary piece was trickier, but David handled it. He tracked down the woman listed on the quitclaim deed. Donna. She was blunt on the phone. I never notarized that. Wasn't even in town that day, and she still had her logbook showing her schedule. On top of that, she pointed out the stamp impression spacing didn't even match her official seal. The forgery was basically a sloppy copy job that collapsed the second anyone looked at it. Slam dunk.
Piece by piece, the case was building itself. Every lie they'd told me was unraveling, and the paper trail was screaming the truth.
But while David handled the legal side, I needed something for myself, something to keep me sane. That's when I decided to start restoring the restaurant, not in some dramatic TV makeover way, just one step at a time. I took 2 weeks off work, rolled up my sleeves, and got to it. First day, I walked in with a contractor to assess the foundation and water damage. The guy whistled low. "It's rough, but not dead. She's got good bones." I almost laughed. He didn't realize he was describing me too. From there, it was cleaning, scraping, hauling junk. I found old menus in the storage room, grease-stained but still legible. I pulled out Grandpa's recipe book from the safe in his office. The cover was cracked, but his handwriting filled every page. That book alone was worth more to me than whatever cash my family thought they'd pocketed. Neighbors started noticing the activity. One woman from across the street, Mrs. Valente, stopped by with banana bread. "Your grandfather would be proud," she said. "He always said you'd do right by this place." She stood in the doorway for a while, telling me stories about how he'd sneak her extra rolls when she couldn't afford a meal. It reminded me why this place mattered. It wasn't just walls and booths. It was history. At night, I'd sit in the office surrounded by dust and peeling paint with Grandpa's will laid out on the desk. I didn't spiral. No drinking binges, no self-pity. Instead, I made lists, contractors to call, fixtures to replace, evidence to organize. Every task was fuel. Meanwhile, David kept pushing. He lined up the CPA, the cook, the church friend, the notary. He pulled every document we had into a timeline so tight it was like a noose. "When this goes to court," he said, "they won't have room to wiggle. We'll have them boxed in from every angle." It wasn't just about winning. It was about finally flipping the script. My family had always banked on me being quiet, being the background guy. Now I was methodically setting fire to their narrative, and I didn't have to scream to do it. By the end of those 2 weeks, the restaurant already looked different. The grime was gone, the booths were scrubbed, the neon sign fixed enough to glow steady again. I even put up one of Grandpa's old photos on the wall, him standing behind the counter, grinning like he owned the world. For the first time in years, I felt steady, focused, dangerous in a way they weren't ready for. The case was forming. The restaurant was breathing again. And the people who thought they'd erased me were about to learn the hard way. I wasn't invisible anymore, and this time, I had all the proof I needed to burn their lies to the ground. David filed the case quietly, methodically, like a surgeon making the first incision. Fraudulent concealment of a valid will, unlawful transfer of property, forgery, misappropriation of estate assets. The works. I didn't tell anyone. No warning texts, no family phone calls. If they were going to find out, it would be when the papers landed in their mailbox. And oh, they found out. Jake was the first to break silence, calling me from a blocked number like he was running some spy op. "Bro, what are you doing? This is insane. You're suing Mom and Dad." I kept my voice cool. "I'm not suing my parents, Jake. I'm suing the people who stole my inheritance and forged legal documents. If that happens to be Mom and Dad, then that's on them." Click. He hung up without another word. The next call came from Janice. "A full-on performance, Ethan. You've lost it. You couldn't just talk to us. You had to go nuclear." I almost laughed. "Funny, Jen. I don't remember you inviting me to talk before you sold the restaurant out from under me. Guess nuclear is the only language you understand." The day of court felt surreal. I showed up in a clean-cut suit, files in order, David at my side, calm, collected, confident. My parents walked in together, stiff and brittle. Janice trailed behind them, heels clicking too loud against the polished floor, her face frozen in a mask of disbelief. Jake didn't show. Typical. The judge was an older woman with sharp glasses and the kind of posture that told you she'd seen every excuse in the book. Perfect. David went first with opening statements. He didn't grandstand. He didn't need to. He laid it out clear as day, Your Honor. My client was the rightful heir to his grandfather's restaurant. The will shows this. The defendants knowingly filed an outdated version and forged a quitclaim deed to seize control. We will show this was not a mistake. It was calculated. Then their lawyer stood. Some local guy I vaguely remembered from cheesy TV commercials about slip-and-fall cases. He tried to spin it like there was no fraud, just confusion during a difficult time. According to him, my parents were grieving, overwhelmed, and just doing their best. Right, their best just happened to line their pockets. Then came the evidence. One by one, David pulled out the heavy hitters. First, the will, dated a month before Grandpa's death, naming me as the heir to the restaurant. No ambiguity. My name in print, signed by him. The judge scanned it slowly, face unreadable. Next, Wallace, the CPA. He testified calmly about the email Grandpa had sent summarizing his estate plan. He even had a printed copy with the timestamp. He was very clear. The restaurant was going to Ethan, and then Tony, the old cook. He told the court how Grandpa constantly talked about me inheriting the place. He said the others didn't care about the restaurant. Ethan did. That was it. Martha from the church followed. She recounted Grandpa's words almost verbatim. Ethan's the only one who won't turn this into an Airbnb. Even the judge cracked the faintest smile at that. Finally, the knockout punch, Donna, the notary. She swore under oath she hadn't notarized the quitclaim deed. Her logbook showed she was at a doctor's appointment the day it was supposedly signed. That's not my signature. It's a forgery. You could feel the air change in the room. Their lawyer shuffled his papers like maybe a miracle would fall out. My parents sat frozen. Mom's lipstick was cracking at the corners. Dad's jaw was locked so tight his face was red. David wasn't done. He produced Grandpa's recipe book, the one I'd found in the office. Inside, tucked between grease-stained pages, was a handwritten note addressed to me. It wasn't long, but it was everything, Ethan. If you're reading this, I hope it all went how I planned. But if they tried to take it, remember, you don't beg for power. You take it back. Quietly, calmly. That letter echoed through the room like a hammer hitting steel. The defense tried their last card, painting me as bitter, petty, the forgotten middle kid out for revenge. David shut that down instantly. Petty doesn't create forged signatures. Revenge doesn't erase wills from probate records. Fraud does. When closing statements wrapped, the judge didn't waste time. She went point by point, slicing through their excuses like tissue paper. The evidence is clear. The valid will named Ethan Davis as the heir to the restaurant. The deed was forged. The defendants knowingly concealed the truth for financial gain. This court rules in favor of the plaintiff on all counts. Bang, gavel down. Restitution was ordered, damages awarded, the fraudulent transfer invalidated, the judge quieted title in my favor, recognizing Bennett Holdings as the rightful owner, and ordered my parents to disgorge the sale proceeds as restitution. On top of that, the trust Grandpa had set aside for me, $40,000 earmarked for upkeep, was reinstated and supplemented with extra damages. My restaurant, my inheritance, my win. My parents didn't even look at me as they shuffled out. Janice right behind them, face pale. I stayed seated a moment longer, steady calm. David leaned over and muttered, "Hell of a statement." "Grandpa made it easy," I said. "I just followed the map." Walking out of that courtroom, I wasn't invisible anymore. I wasn't the placeholder, the backup, the one they thought could be erased. I was the one holding the deed, the will, the judgment, and the truth. And for the first time, it wasn't me who had to squirm in silence. It was them. The verdict didn't just sting, it gutted them. Court-ordered damages weren't pocket change. They had to sell assets fast. Dad unloaded his precious fishing boat, the one he bragged about more than he ever bragged about me. Then went the lake cabin they used as their getaway. Mom even pawned some jewelry she used to wave around at family events. For people who built their whole identity on image, watching them scramble for cash was better than any apology they could have muttered. Dad's reputation took the biggest hit. The local investors he used to brag about, gone. One by one they pulled their money. Didn't want to be associated with a man stamped guilty of estate fraud. The businessman facade cracked overnight. He was just another guy who thought he was smarter than paperwork. Mom shrank into the background, not showing up to church meetings, not hosting her little community luncheons. She'd spent years pretending to be above everyone, and now she couldn't even meet a neighbor's eyes. Janice's downfall was almost entertaining. Her event planning business collapsed like a cheap tent. Clients bailed after the news broke. One even demanded a refund, saying they didn't want fraud attached to their wedding. Her Instagram posts turned bitter, cryptic quotes about betrayal and toxic family members paired with blurry photos of wine glasses. She wasn't a CEO anymore. She was just another girl ranting on social media. Jake's spiral was predictable. Without Dad covering for him, his debt caught up fast, credit collectors, repossession threats. Even a rumor he almost lost his car. He sent me a text one night, didn't know everything. Should have asked more. Sorry, bro. It was weak, late, and not worth a reply. While they drowned, I built. The restaurant reopened, not as some flashy gourmet spot, but as exactly what Grandpa intended, a community hub. Smaller menu, simple dishes, but done right. Burgers, pie, coffee that actually tasted good. I didn't chase trends. I chased comfort. A year later, on the anniversary of the verdict, I stood outside the restaurant at dusk. The neon open sign buzzed to life, glowing steady against the dark. Inside, I could hear the clink of plates, low laughter, Sinatra on the jukebox. It felt alive. That's when I saw headlights creeping slow, my parents' car, Dad driving, Mom in the passenger seat. They didn't stop, didn't wave, didn't even glance my way, just rolled past silent like ghosts. I didn't chase them, didn't need to. I turned, flipped the lock on the door, and walked back inside. The warmth hit me, the sound of people talking, eating, living. They had their silence. I had everything else, and the sign stayed lit.